be talking through strategies on how to beat the 4 Bs: burping, belly discomfort, bowel changes, and bloating. So, before we jump into the actual strategies to beat these symptoms, I want you guys to really understand the gut and, on top of that, the digestive system. Since these two are usually used like interchangeably, however, they each have their own functions and their own reason working in the body. So, first, we're going to start with the digestive system. So, the digestive system is made up of our GI tract. So, this is also known as our digestive tract. So, there's just specific organs that make up the GI tract, which is the mouth, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, large intestine, and on top of that, our colon. So, we also have accessory organs, which are the liver, the pancreas, and the gallbladder. And these are all organs that are responsible for our digestive system and our digestive system functions. And the main function of our digestive system is to really break down nutrients from the food we are consuming, and on top of that, absorbing the nutrients from the food we are consuming. And it's also going to use those nutrients as energy to really repair our cells, and on top of that, for growth and development. On the other hand, we have our gut microbiome, which influences how our digestive system is functioning, and on top of that, our overall health. So we have our gut microbiome, which is our gut flora or just our microbiome, and it is made up of trillions of different microorganisms, which include parasites, viruses, bacteria, and fungi. So most people don't really know that we actually have these different bacteria and fungi and parasites and viruses that coexist peacefully, but they start fighting against one another when there begins to be an imbalance in our gut microbiome, which we'll go more into. But when these organisms are actually working together, they are able to actually help us break down our food properly, and on top of that, synthesize certain vitamins and amino acids, such as our B vitamins, our vitamin K, and other key enzymes that are needed to form vitamin B12, even helping our complex carbs being broken down. And on top of that, these bacteria that break down these complex carbs are also producing short chain fatty acids that are used by the body as a nutrient source, but it also plays an important role in muscle function and even in the prevention of chronic diseases. Any changes in your digestive system or in your gut microbiome can lead to these common gut issues, such as the bloating, the burping, bowel changes, and on top of that, just the belly discomfort. So, if you have ever experienced bloating, which most likely you have, it is really common to have these symptoms after eating, but it's not normal. It's actually signaling that there's something going on in your gut. On top of that, if you have to unbutton your pants after eating because your stomach is swelling so much, this is another key indicator that we have to look at your digestive system and your gut health, because something is just not right there. On top of that, the excessive bloating, especially after eating or drinking carbonated drinks, or even just after drinking water, this is another signal that there may be something going on. With bowel changes, this can be either diarrhea, so you have to run to the bathroom after eating or after drinking a food. Sensitivity like dairy is very common, or even just eating gluten can really lead to you running to the bathroom. On top of that, if you have to rely on laxatives to use the restroom, you are constipated. So, any type of bowel changes, bloating, burping, or even just belly discomfort to the point where you are cramping or your stomach is turning, these are all very common symptoms and gut issues, but they are just not normal. Let's start with bloating. So, when it comes to bloating, this is where your belly just feels super full, it feels tight, and it's often due to just a gas buildup in your gut. So, there are a few different causes, especially for all of these symptoms, right? But we really want to understand and break apart each symptom so we can dive a little bit deeper into them. So the most common root causes to bloating are, we're always going to start with the brain first. So chronic stress is a huge problem in our society just due to the lifestyle that we are living, and that's going to lead to bloating. First off, if we are stuck in that fight or flight response instead of the rest and digest state, we are not going to be able to properly digest our food. So that signal between your brain and your gut is not there. So that means when you are eating, when you're under stress, you can actually not have your digestive system activated or stimulated. So now you're not able to actually properly break down the food you are consuming. So we have to learn how to get out of that fight or flight response and get back into rest and digest before consuming our food. The second root cause of bloating is going to be food triggers. So the most common food triggers that are going to lead to bloating are gluten sensitivities, and on top of that, dairy sensitivities. So most women, we have a lot of different things going on in our bodies. We have a lot more hormones than men. On top of that, we have a lot more needs instead of men. So when it comes to gluten and dairy, we really have to be mindful about these things, especially if we are experiencing any type of digestive issues after eating. So the first step is to really understand what is triggering that bloating. And if it's gluten and dairy, you might want to remove that for at least 2 weeks to 21 days. Do an elimination diet and then add that back in to see what exactly is triggering the bloating. From there, the next root cause that is often connected back to bloating is going to be digestive dysfunction. So, like I said, when we are under chronic stress, that's going to really block our digestive function. So, digestive dysfunction is really when we are lacking specific enzymes, or we have low stomach acid, or on top of that, we have some bile stagnation. So, our bile from our gallbladder and our liver is so thick that it is not being released to actually break down the food we are consuming. So if we have any type of digestive dysfunction, if we are lacking enzymes that are coming from our pancreas, then we're not going to be able to break down our protein, our carbs, or even our fats. So we're going to have a lot of bloating going on because now that food is just sitting in your stomach, sitting in your intestines, and it's not moving or being broken down properly. And lastly, another root cause of bloating is going to be gut dysbiosis or gut imbalances. So, dysbiosis is defined by just an imbalance in the bacterial composition in your gut. It can also be changes in the bacterial activities that are supposed to be going on, or it can be changes in the bacterial distribution within the gut. So, there are three main types of dysbiosis. Number one is going to be like the loss of beneficial bacteria. Number two is going to be the overgrowth of potentially pathogenic bacteria. And number three is going to be the loss of overall bacterial diversity. So we want to have a very diverse gut microbiome. And so when there's any type of change in your gut microbiome, such as a dysbiosis or an imbalance, that can lead to a lot of problems with your digestive system, and on top of that, how well you are breaking down your food properly, which is going to lead to the bloating. And then of course we have hidden infections such as parasite overgrowths, or on top of that, fungi overgrowths. So these all can lead to bloating. So we really want to, number one, understand where the bloating is coming from, if it's chronic stress, if it's food triggers, if it's digestive dysfunction, or even if it's a gut imbalance or hidden infections. So, the first step is we really want to shift your nervous system into a rest and digest mode before consuming each meal. So, this can look different per person, but the easiest thing you can do is by taking 5 to 10 deep breaths before eating. This is really going to help your nervous system shift into that rest and digest state, stimulate your digestive system, kind of let your body know that this is the time that we are going to consume food and we need help breaking down that food. On top of that, we want to identify food triggers. You can do this with a nutritional assessment or a food journal, which is the easiest thing you can do. All you need to do is write down everything you eat in a day and do that for about 3 to 5 days and really figure out what is triggering those symptoms. So you also want to write down next to the food you're consuming how you feel before eating that food and how you feel after eating that food. So that's going to really help identify any food triggers that may be going on. Next, you want to remove processed foods. So that is something that I always tell everyone. You want to really reduce your processed food intake just because these are going to impact your digestive system. It can change your gut microbiome, and any changes to your digestive system or your gut microbiome can lead to these gut issues. And lastly, you want to test, just don't guess. Testing is so important if you really want to understand the root causes of your gut issues and on top of that, of the bloating. Next, we're going to be jumping into burping solutions. So before we jump into the solutions, I really want to go over the causes of excessive burping. So besides just swallowing too much air when you're eating or drinking carbonated drinks or certain foods, we really want to look at, again, at chronic stress. So chronic stress, again, you're not going to be in that rest and digest state, so you're not able to properly break down your food. So that's just going to allow the food to sit in your stomach and really cause a lot of excess gas, which is going to lead to the burping. On top of that, when you are under chronic stress, you're also most likely not chewing your food properly. So digestion does begin in the brain, but it also starts in the mouth. That is where a lot of enzymes are released in the mouth. And so chewing is so important so you can actually stimulate those enzymes. And on top of that, overeating. So many people are overeating or they're just not, again, chewing properly. So those two are going to go hand in hand. You are rushing during the day, so you are just stuffing your face with food, forgetting to chew. And on top of that, you may just be super hungry because you are skipping meals throughout the whole day. So now you're overeating at dinner and now you have the excessive burping afterwards. So we have to always start at the brain first and the mouth. Next, we start looking at digestive dysfunction. So again, the lack of enzymes, on top of that, low stomach acid, especially if you are constantly consuming Tums or any type of anti-acid reducers. Those are really going to stop the production of your stomach acid. And we need stomach acid in order to properly digest your food and on top of that, protect you from pathogens from entering your intestines. So HCl is super important. Making sure you are actually stimulating your digestive system before consuming food is so important so we can avoid the excessive burping. And then we also have that stagnation in the bile. So bile stagnation, you're not able to properly break down your fats, and so that can also lead to excessive burping. Next, we go into the gut dysbiosis. So we already touched on this with the bloating, but gut dysbiosis, any changes in your gut microbiome is going to lead to burping just because that impacts your digestive system. And then lastly, infections. So the most common infection that is related back to the excessive burping is going to be H. pylori. So this is a bacterial infection, and this is very common and almost everyone has H. pylori, but again, any imbalance and overgrowth of H. pylori is going to lead to excessive burping. So now that you know the common causes of burping, we're going to jump into some techniques for reducing burping and on top of that, improving digestion. So the first start where you want to start is going to be chewing your food properly and really paying attention to when you're eating and what you're eating. That's really going to tell your brain that it is time to eat. It's going to send signals to your mouth to start stimulating some enzymes to release that. And on top of that, chewing your food is also going to break down your food more. So when it's sent down into your stomach, now your stomach acid can do its job and start breaking down the food more. And on top of that, absorbing some nutrients. Next, you want to drink water with your meals rather than before or after, just because when you're drinking water, that's actually going to increase your or decrease your stomach acid. So instead of your stomach acid being super acidic, it's going to alkalize it. And so now your stomach acid is not able to break down your food properly. Lastly, we really want to shift your nervous system into that rest and digest state. So again, digestion begins in the brain. So whenever you're looking at food, smelling food, or even just thinking about food, you want to be in that rest and digest state where you're actually able to chew your food properly and eat mindfully. We have gone over bloating and burping and ways to reduce these symptoms. Now we're going to jump into demystifying some bowel changes. So, some common bowel changes are going to be including diarrhea, constipations, and just any changes or alternation between the two. So, if you are not pooping daily, you are constipated. So most people are using the restroom 1 to 3 times a week, but that is not good. That is a clear sign that you are constipated. So we have to be using the restroom 1 to 2 times daily and not 1 to 3 times a week. On top of that, diarrhea. So there can be numerous reasons for diarrhea. It can be you ate the wrong foods, or on top of that, you have food intolerances. So you really want to get that food journal out and make sure you're noting down everything so you can really identify what those food sensitivities are. And then you want to dig deeper underneath that, right? There's always a reason why you are sensitive to certain foods. So you really want to address your gut. And then if you're alternating between the two, this is a clear sign that there's probably a gut imbalance going on. So there's some type of dysbiosis that is leading to the alternation of the constipation and the diarrhea. So again, if you're not pooping daily, you are constipated. If you are having diarrhea after eating, it's most likely due to a food intolerance or food sensitivity. And if you are alternating between the two, there's some type of dysbiosis going on in your gut. So we always want to dig deeper underneath those because, again, there could be numerous reasons for that, and we have to address the root cause. So now that we kind of understand these different bowel changes, we're going to jump into just some ways to identify and start healing your gut. So when it comes to gut health, it is so important to take a holistic approach. We want to first test in order to actually see what is going on in the gut. I like to use functional labs or a GI map just to really dig deeper with overall health, how your digestive system is functioning. And on top of that, the GI map is going to look more at infections and into the gut microbiome and if there's any imbalances going on. On top of that, once you know exactly what is going on in your gut microbiome and with your digestive system, that's when you can start introducing some gut healing foods. And on top of that, following the gut healing roadmap that we're going to be going through. So the first step with the gut healing roadmap is to remove any gut irritants. So that is why it's so important to do the food journal to really identify what is irritating your gut. On top of that, to start really simply, you want to start with reducing the processed foods as much as possible because that is going to really shift your gut microbiome towards a pathogenic state. So now we are allowing and attracting parasites, bacteria overgrowths, candida overgrowths, and so many other different infections and gut imbalances that can be going on. So number one, remove gut irritants. This can be the processed foods. On top of that, you also want to reduce the unnecessary medications such as Tylenol, ibuprofen, and even birth control can also create some gut irritation and gut inflammation. So it's really important to go through the remove state, remove those gut irritants or reduce them as much as possible, and then we can jump into actually replacing the gut dysfunction, which is more looking at your digestive system and what needs more support. Maybe you need some pancreatic enzymes to help you actually your food more. Maybe you need to work on increasing your stomach acid, or on top of that, you may need to actually increase your bile movement. So you really want to make sure your bile is not stagnant because that can lead to a lot of different problems such as gallstones. So we really want to make sure our bile is moving throughout the body, doing its job, breaking down our fats, and on top of that, grabbing onto toxins and taking them out of the body. So once we replace gut dysfunction, that's when we can jump into actually repairing your gut lining. So the gut lining is so important. This is really where nutrients are absorbed. And on top of that, this is like a barrier against pathogens and infections and toxins. So it really plays two important roles, protection and on top of that, absorption. So when the gut lining is damaged by the gut irritants, we really want to repair that gut lining. So there are different ways to do this. As always, you want to consult whoever you're working with, but repairing the gut lining can be as simple as addressing stress, or you can also use targeted supplements and herbs. So my favorite go-to is going to be aloe vera juice. This isn't for everyone, so make sure you guys are talking to your healthcare professional. But you really want to really repair that gut lining by reducing inflammation and on top of that, sealing it up with specific nutrients. I also like glutamine. And lastly, once we have removed the gut irritants, we have replaced gut dysfunction, and we have repaired the gut lining, that's when we can jump into actually rebuilding the gut microbiome. So there's no really like one size fits all approach. So some people, we really don't follow this like in a row. We really want to see where your gut is at, where your body is at, and what you specifically need. So this is just really a general roadmap that we follow. But once we rebuild the gut microbiome, I like to start with food first. So adding in prebiotic rich foods, probiotic rich foods, and on top of that, just increasing diversity in the plants you're eating. This can be colorful fruits, colorful vegetables. These are all going to help rebuild your gut microbiome. Just to recap everything we have covered in this episode, we have went over the 4 common gut issues, which are bloating, burping, belly discomfort, and on top of that, bowel changes. We covered the root causes of each common gut issue, strategies to overcome those common gut issues, and the gut healing roadmap. So as always, you want to get testing done to see what your body specifically needs and get a personalized roadmap or protocol to target your unique gut issues. Everyone can be experiencing the same symptom, but what is underlying that is completely different from person to person. So I really encourage you to just start taking some steps towards bettering your gut health, and on top of that, really learning what is causing your gut issues by maintaining a food diary, a food journal, and then on top of that, getting testing done. If that's blood work, if that's a GI map, you guys can always reach out to me on Instagram, just DM me, and I would love to chat with you more about what testing would be best for your situation. And if you guys love this episode, make sure you guys subscribe, and on top of that, leave a review and let me know what else you guys want to learn about and what else you may be dealing with so we can talk about it on our next episode.